Magandang araw, I am Carlo El Paliado. Welcome and magandang RMC. This is my report to prelim to final. Correction Administration. The study and practice of a systematic management of jails or prison or other institution concerned with the custody, treatment, and rehabilitation of criminal offenders. Objectives. At the end of the lesson, the student should be able to give idea on the policing process, to give idea how the police agency are organized and managed in order to achieve the goals of law enforcement most effectively, efficiently, and productivity. Historical perspective on correction. Important dates and events in the history of correction. 13th century, securing sanctuary. In the 13th century, a criminal could avoid punishment by demanding refuge in a church for a period of 40 days, at the end of which time he has compelled to leave the real by a road or path assigned to him. In the 13th century, the criminal can avoid the punishment sa pamamagitan ng pag-angkin ng kasalanan sa isang simbahan sa loob ng 40 days. 1468 England. Torture as a form of punishment became prevalent. In England, torture is a form of punishment is become prevalent. Why? During the first half of the 20th century, torture became more prevalent in Europe with the advent of secret police, World War I, World War II, and the rise of communists and fascists. 16th century. Transportation of criminal in England was authorized at the end of the 16th century. Russia and Europe countries followed this system. It partially relieved overcrowded of prisons. Transportation was abandoned in 1835. In 16th century, the criminal was transported in England. At the end of 16th century, Russia and European countries followed the system because naging crowded ang kanilang kulungan. At 1835, transportation was abandoned. 17th century to late 18th century, death penalty became prevalent as a form of punishment. The first established death penalty laws date as far back as the 18th century in the Code of King Hammurabi of Babylon, which codified the death penalty for 25 different crimes. Reason why death penalty became the usual punishment during this period and thereafter. Death of outlaws became a protection for the English people. It is because the people during this period did not totally believe yet in the ability to a strong police force to combat criminals. People lack confidence in the transportation of criminals. Gaols and galleys become center of corruption and ineffective instrument of punishment. Death penalty. Gaols. Jails, pre-trial detention facilities operated by English sheriff. Galleys. Long, low, narrow, single-deck ship propelled by shells, usually rowed by criminals, a type of ship used for transportation of criminals in the 16th century. Hawks. Decrepit transport, former warship used to house prisoners in the 18th and 19th century. These were abandoned warships converted into prison as means of relieving congestion of prisoners. They were also called floating hills. There are the three primary schools of penology. First, the classical school. Second, the neoclassical school. And third, the positivist Italian school. The classical school, it maintains the doctrine of psychological hedonism or free will, that the individual calculates pleasure and pains in advance of action and regulates his conduct by the result of his calculation. The classical school of thought was premised on the idea that the people have free will in making a decision. The neoclassical school, it maintained that while the deicical doctrine is correct and general, it should be modified in certain details, since children and lunatics cannot calculate the differences of pleasure from pain. They should not be regarded as criminals, hence they should be free from punishment. There is a difference between total free will and determined, and argues that no person has total free will. The neoclassical school allows for mitigating factors to be reviewed by a judge as per his discretion. The positivist Italian school, the school that denied individual responsibility and reflected non-punitive reaction to crime and criminality. It adheres the crime as any other act is a natural phenomenon. Criminals are considered as sick individuals who need to be treated by treatment programs rather than punitive action against them. The positive school was founded Cesar Lombroso and led by two others, Enrico Ferri and Rafael Garatallo, and criminology. It has attempted to find scientific objectives for measurement and quantification of criminal behavior. Codes. History has shown that there are three main legal systems in the world, which have been extended to are adopted by all countries aside from those that produce them. In their chronological order, they are the Roman and Mohammedan or Arabic and the Anglo-American laws. Among the three, it was Roman law that has the most lasting and most pervading influence. The Roman private law, which include criminals law, especially has offered the most adequate basic concept which sharply defined and concise and inconsistent terminology, mature rules, and a complete system, logical and firm, tempered with a high sense of equality. Babylonian and Sumerian codes. The Code of Hammurabi was one of the earliest and most complete written legal codes, and was proclaimed by the Babylonian king Hammurabi, who reigned from 1792 to 1750. Hammurabi expanded the city of Babylon along the Euphrates River to unite all the southern Mesopotamia. Roman and Greek codes. Emperor Justinian of Rome wrote his Code of Law, an effort to match a desirable amount of punishment to all possible crimes. However, the law did not survive due to the fall of the Roman Empire, but left a foundation of Western legal codes. The 12 tables represented the earliest codification of Roman law incorporated into the Justinian Code. It is the foundation of all public and private law of the Roman until the time of Justinian. It is also a collection of legal principles argued on mental tables and set up of the forum. The Burgundian Code specified punishment according to the social class of offenders, dividing them into nobles, middle class, and lower class, and specifying the value of life of each person according to social status. The emergence of secular law. Secular laws were advocated by Christian philosophers who recognized the need for justice. Three laws were distinguished. External law. External governance or law comes from federal, state, or local agency. Natural law. Natural law is a foundation for moral and civil law. Human law is the interpretation of natural law in different contexts. These all laws are intended for the common good, but the human law only become valid if it does not conflict with the other two laws. The pioneers. William Penn, 1614 to 1718. He fought for religious freedom and individual rights. He is the first leader to prescribe imprisonment as correctional treatment for major offenders. He is also responsible for the abolition of death penalty and torture as a form of punishment. Charles Montesquieu, 1689 to 1755, a French historian and philosopher who analyzed law as an expression of justice. He believed that the harm's punishment would undermine morality and that appealing to moral sentiment as a better means of preventing crime. Voltaire, 1694 to 1778. He was the most versatile of all philosophers during this period. He believed that fear of shame was a deterrent to crime. He fought the legality sanctioned practice of torture. Cesar Bonesa Marches de Barca, 1738 to 1794. He wrote an essay entitled An Essay on Crimes and Punishment, the most exciting essay on law during this century. It presented the humanistic goal of law. Jeremy Bentham, 1748 to 1832, the greatest leader in the reform of English criminal law. He believes that whatever punishment designed to negate whatever pleasure or gain the criminal derives from crime, the crime route would go down. Bentham was the one who devised the ultimate panopticon prison, a prison that consists of a large circular building containing multi-cells around the periphery. It was never built. John Howard, 1726 to 1790, the sheriff of Bedfordshire in 1773, who devoted his life and fortune to prison reform. After his finding on English prison, he recommended the following single cells for sleeping: segregation of women, segregation of youth, provision of sanitation facilities, abolition of peace system by which jails obtain money from prisoners. Pre-Spanish Filipino civilizations. Maragtas Code. The Maragtas Code is also known as Code of Sumacuel. Deliberated refusal to work in the field or to plant anything for daily subsistence is a most serious crime which deserves severe penalty. Robbery of any sort shall be punished severely. Only those who can support of a family or several families can get married more than one and have as many children as they can. If a man has a child by a woman and he runs away to avoid marriage, as child by this woman shall be killed because it is difficult for a woman without a husband support a child. The Kalanchaw Code. The second oldest known written code of the Filipino people is the Penal Code of Raja Kalanchaw, the third chief of Panay. It was written by Kalanchaw in 1433, after which he submitted it to his overlord Raja Bizar, consisting of 18 orders or sogo. It runs as follows. The making of the laws. The laws of the barangay were made by the dato with the help of the elders. In the case of the confederation, the law were promulgated by the superior dato with the aid of subordinate or lesser datus. When a law was to be made for the whole confederation, the supreme dato would summon the subordinate datos to his own house and explain the need for such a law. The other datos usually assented, and the law was thus written down. Once the law was finished, a village choir called Amalokan with the bell in the hand will travel through with the confederation and announce the contents of the new law in public gathering. From that time on, the law went into effect, and any person who violated and incurred its penalties. Judicial procedure. The judicial system of the pre-Spanish Filipinos. When the Spanish colonizer first arrived in the Philippines archipelago, they found the indigenous Filipinos without any written laws. Mainly the laws enforced were derived from customs, usage, and tradition. These laws were believed to be God-given and were orally transmitted from generation to generation. A remarkable feature of these customs and tradition was that they were found to be very similar to one another, notwithstanding that they were observed in widely dispersed islands of the archipelago. There were no judges and lawyers who were trained formally in the law, although there were elders who devoted time to the study of customs, usages, and traditions of their tribes to quality them as consultants or advisors on these matters. The unit of government of the indigenous Filipinos was the barangay, which was family-based community of 30 to 100 families, occupying a PUC locality or area, headed by a chieftain called a dato, who exercised all functions of government, executive, legislative, and judicial. A barangay was not only a political but also a social and economic organization. In the exercise of his judicial authority, the dato act as a judge or hukum in settling disputes and deciding cases in his barangay. The historical background of the Philippines penal institutions. Correction in the Philippines started during pre-colonial times. It was, however, organized on individual community basis. It was only during the Spanish regime when unorganized correction service was made operational. Pre-colonial and Spanish regimes. During the pre-colonial times, the information prison system was community-based as there were no national penitentiaries to speak of. Native who defied or violated the local laws were meted appropriate penalties by the local chieftains. Incarceration in the community was meant to prevent the culprit from further harming the local residents. The formal prison system in the Philippines started only during the Spanish regime, where an organized corrective service was made operational, established in 1847, pursuant to Section 1708 of the Revised Administrative Code and formally opened by Royal Decree in 1865. The Old Bilibid prison was constructed as the main penitentiary on Aroqueta Street, Manila, and designed to house the prison population of the country. This prison became known as the Carcel Presidio Correccional and could accommodate 1,127 prisoners. The carcel was designed to house 600 prisoners who were regulated according to Class 6 and crime, while the Presidio could accommodate 527 prisoners. Plans for the construction of the prison were first punishable on September 12, 1859, but it was not until April 10, 1866 that the entire facility was completed. The prison occupied a quadrangular piece of land 180 meters long on each side, which was formerly a part of the Mexicali estate in the heart of Manila. It housed a building for a was formerly a part of office and quarters of the prison warden, and 15 buildings or departments for prison that were arranged in a radial way to form spokes. The central tower formed the hub. Under this tower was chapel. There were 4 cell houses for the isolated prisoners and 4 isolated buildings located on the 4 corners of the walls, which served as kitchen, hospital, and stores. The prison was divided in the middle by a thick wall. One half of the enclosed space was assigned to presidium prisoners and other half of carousel prisoners. In 1908, concrete modern 20-bed capacity hospital as well as new dormitories for prisoners were added. A carpentry shop was organized within the confines of the facility. For sometimes the shop became a trademark for fine workmanship of furniture made by prisoners. At this time, sales of handicraft were done through the institution, and inmates were compensated depending on the availability of funds. As a consequence, inmates often had to sell through the retail of barter their product. The American and Commonwealth government. When the Americans took over in 90s, the Bureau of Prison was created under the Reorganization Act of 1905. Act number 1407, dated November 1, 1905, as an agency under the Department of Commerce and Police. It also paved the way for the re-establishment of San Ramon Prison in 1907, which was destroyed during the Spanish-American War on January 1, 1915. The San Ramon Prison was placed under the auspices of the Bureau of Prison and started receiving prisoners from Mindanao. Before the reconstruction of San Ramon Prison, the Americans established in 1904 the Luhit Penal Settlement, now Iwahig Prison and Penal Farm. On a vast reservation of 28,072 hectares, it will reach a total land area of 40,000 hectares in the late 1950s. Located on the westernmost part of the archipelago, far from the main town, to confine incorrigibles with little hope of rehabilitation. The area was expanded to 41,000 hectares by virtue of Executive Order number 67 issued by Governor Newton Gilbert on October 15, 1912. Other penal colonies were established during the American regime. On November 27, 1929, the Correctional Institution for Women was created under Article number 3579 to provide separate facilities for women offenders, while the Davao Penal Colony in Southern Mindanao was opened in 1932 under Act number 3732. Transfer of Bilibid Prison to Muntinlupa. The increasing number of committals to the old Bilibid Prison, the growing urbanization of Manila, and the constant lobbying by conservative groups prompted the government to plan and develop a new site from the National Penitentiary, which was to be on the outskirts of the undercenter. Accordingly, Commonwealth Act No. 67 was enacted appropriating 1 million pesos for the construction of a new national prison in the southern suburb of Muntinlupa. Rizal in 1935. The old prison was transformed into a receiving center and a storage facility for farm produce from the colonies. It was later abandoned and is now under the jurisdiction of the Public Estates Authority. On November 15, 1940, all inmates of the old Bilibid prison in Manila were transferred to the new site. The new institution had a capacity of 3,000 prisoners, and it was officially named the New Bilibid Prison on January 22, 1941. The prison reservation has an area of 587 hectares, part of which was areable. The prison compound proper had an area of 3,000 to 300 meters, or a total of 9 hectares. It was surrounded by 3 layers of barbed wire. Development after World War II. After World War II, there was a surplus of steel matting in the inventory, and it was used to improve the security fences of the prison. A death chamber was constructed in 1941 at the rear area of the camp, when the mode of execution was through electrocution in the late 60s. Fences were further reinforced with the concrete slabs. The original institution became the maximum security compound in the 70s, and continues to be so up to present, housing not only death convict and inmates sentenced to life terms, but also those with numbers or numerous pending cases, multiple conviction and sentence of more than 20 years. Non-operational National Prison. Fort Bonifacio Prison. A committee report submitted to the President Carlos P. Garcia described Fort Bonifacio, formerly known as Fort William McKinley, as a military reservation located in Makati, which was established after the Americans came to the Philippines. The prison was originally used as a detention center for offenders of U.S. military law and ordinance. After the liberation of the Philippines, the reservation was transferred to the Philippines government, which instructed the Bureau of Prison to use the facility for confinement of maximum security prisoners. For several years, incorrigibles were mixed with the political prisoners, thus convicted of rehabilitation at the Fort Bonifacio facility until June 30, 1968, when it was converted into a prison exclusively for political offenders. After a bloody April 1969 riot at the Muntinlupa facility, however, incorrigible prisoners from Muntinlupa were transferred to Fort Bonifacio. During the administration of President Diosdado Macapagal, the fort was renamed for Andres Bonifacio. The correctional facility was also renamed from Bonifacio Prison. The one-story building now stands on a 1 hectare area. The Fort Bonifacio Prison continued to be a satellite prison of the National penitentiary even after martial law was lifted. It was only the late 1980s that the facility was vacated by the Bureau of Prison. Concepts of correctional administration and operations. Juridical condition of penalty. Punishment must be productive of suffering without however affecting the integrity of the human personality. Commensurate with the offense. Different crimes must be punished with the different penalties. Article 25 RPC. Personal. The guilty one must be the one of the be punishable, no proxy. Legal. The consequence must be in accordance with the law. Equal. Equal for all persons. Certain. No one must escape its effect. Correctional. Changes the attitude of offenders and become law-abiding citizens. Duration of penalty. Death penalty. Capital punishment. Reclusion perpetual, life imprisonment, a term of 20 to 40 years imprisonment. Reclusion temporal, 12 years and 1 day to 20 years imprisonment. Prison major, 6 years and 1 day to 12 years. Prison correctional, 6 months and 1 day to 6 years. Arresto mayor, 1 month and 1 day to 6 months. Arresto minor, 1 day to 30 days. Ban to keep the peace, discretionary on the part of the court. The Philippine prison system. Bureau of Correction. Bureau of Prison was renamed Bureau of Correction under Executive Order 292 passed during the Aquino administration. It states that the head of the Bureau of Correction is the Director of Prison, who is appointed by the President on the Philippines with confirmation of the Commission of Appointments. The Bureau of Correction has general and control of all national prisons or penitentiaries. It is charged with the safekeeping of all insular prisoners confined therein or committed to the custody of the Bureau. General classification of prisoner. Detention prisoner. Those detained for investigation, preliminary hearing, or awaiting trial. A detained in a locked-up jail. They are prisoner under the jurisdiction of courts. Sentenced prisoners. Offenders who are committed to the jail or prison in order to serve their sentence after final conviction by a competent court. They are prisoner under the jurisdiction of penal institution. Prisoners who are on safekeeping includes non-criminal offenders who are detained in order to protect the community against their harmful behavior. Classification of sentenced prisoner. Insular or national prisoners. Those sentenced to suffer a term of sentence of 3 years and 1 day to life imprisonment. Thus sentenced to suffer a term of imprisonment cited above that upheld the judgment and unable to file a bond for their temporary liberty. Provincial prisoner. Those persons sentenced to suffer a term of imprisonment from 6 months and 1 day to years or a fine not more than 1,000 pesos or both, or those detained therein waiting for preliminary investigation of their cases consignable by the RTC. City prisoner. Those sentenced to suffer a term of imprisonment from 1 day to 3 years or a fine of not more than 1,000 pesos or both. Those detained there whose cases are filed with the MTC. Those detained there whose cases are cognizable by the RTC and under preliminary investigation. Municipal prisoners. Those confined in municipal jails deserve an imprisonment from 1 day to 6 months. Thus detained there whose trial or their cases are pending with the MTC. Types of jail, operation and correctional organization structure. There are three types of jail. Lockup jail is a security facility common to police station used for temporary confinement of an individual held for investigation. Ordinary jails is the type of jail commonly used to detain a convicted criminal offender to serve sentence less than 3 years. Workhouse or jail farm or camp, a facility that houses minimum custody offenders who are serving short sentence or those who are undergoing constructive work programs. It provides full employment of prisoners, remedial services, and constructive leisure time activities. Duties and responsibility. Warden, direction, coordination, and control of the jail, responsible for the security, safety, discipline, and well-being of inmates. Assistant Warden. The office of the Assistant Warden undertakes the development of a systematic process of treatment. Chairman of the Classification Board and Disciplinary Board. Administrative groups. The administrative groups take charge of all administrative function of the Jail Bureau. Personnel Management Branch, assessment of personnel, procedures of selection, preparation of personnel reports, individual records files. Records and Statistic Branch, keep and maintain booking sheets and arrest reports. Keep an orderly record of fingerprints and photographs. Present, prepare statistical data of inmates. Property and Supply Branch, take charge of the safekeeping of equipments and supply and material needed for the operation of the jail. Budget and Finance Branch, take charge of all finance matters such as budgeting, financing, accounting, and auditing. Security groups. The security groups provides a system of sound custody, security and control of inmates and their movements, and also responsible of enforced prison or jail discipline. There are two jail discipline: escort platoon, secured platoon. Rehabilitation purposes groups. This group provides services and assistance to prisoners and their families to enable them to solve their individual needs and problems arising from the prisoner confinement. First, Medical and Health Services Branch provide medical and physical examination of inmates upon confinement, treatment of sick inmates, and conduct medical and physical examination and provide medicine or recommends for the hospitalization of seriously ill prisoner or inmates. It also conducts psychiatric and psychological penal provision on correction. Philippine correctional philosophies and their legal basis. The Philippine Constitution of 1987. The state values the dignity of every human person and guarantees full respect for human rights. No person shall be detained solely by reason of his political belief and aspiring. No involuntary servitude in any form shall exist except as a punishment of a crime. At dito nagtatapos ang aking report. Thank you and magandang araw.